Lakeside Dental Clinic, Go Island, is brought to you by Lakeside Dental Clinic.
We're visiting the Nanaimo Museum today, discovering, exploring, and learning all about Departure Bay in Nanaimo.
Keeping the iconic VW Beetle and original camper van on the road in Nanaimo, landing a role in one of YTV's top shows, and breaking up with coffee.
You are watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. I'm Kate Bergen. Did you know that Departure Bay, an integral part of Nanaimo's history, used to be quite remote and removed? You could access it most easily by boat. It's a winter ground, was a winter ground for the Nanaimo First Nations, and there's a lot of crime stories and ghost stories coming out of Departure Bay as well. We're going to explore some of those today on Go. But first, the VW Beetle and the camper van from Volkswagen are more than 75 years old, and while neither one of those are still in production, there's a local group of enthusiasts who are doing everything they can to keep these iconic vehicles on the road. Here's Annette Lucas. Departure Bay is a central point in Nanaimo's history. Lots has happened there. It shaped our city, shaped our culture, and it all started with the Nanaimo First Nation.
That's right.
How did they use the area?
Well, the Nanaimo have had a winter village in Departure Bay for thousands of years. And that means that they were in Departure Bay from November until about March every year. And they really considered that to be their home village. So that's where their families were rooted.
And there's lots of remnants of that, because this is some images from an excavation that took place, or a dig?
That's right. There was an archaeological dig in the 1990s. It was right beside the Kin Hut, and there were artifacts found that give us an idea of what day-to-day life was like for the Nanaimo, the tools they used, the type of food that they ate, even where their houses were located. There were longhouses all along Departure Bay Beach.
Wow. And we see an image of that up here. This is an actual picture.
That's
of
correct.
One of those longhouses. And this woman is holding, Emily Manson is holding a story stone. Yes. And you have that story stone, whoa, right here. You okay?
I'm okay?
We don't want to have any stories of anybody falling over today. We don't need that. So I can touch it. That's one of the benefits of the TV. We can pick it up,
Yes.
right? And how would this have been used?
The story stone was held by children while they were sitting around the fire at night inside the longhouse, and usually they'd be listening to stories told by their grandparents. So their grandparents would be teaching them how to fish, how to gather food, teaching them about their family's history, how to be a good person. And the idea was that when the child held the stone, it helped them focus on listening to their grandparents.
That's a tactic used in schools today. I can vouch for that. So it's almost as if all those stories that are told are held somehow in this stone.
It's a very interesting stone. As you can probably notice, it just feels good when you hold it. Yeah. And it has a happy face carved on it, which means that it would have been held while listening to happy stories.
Right. Now, Departure Bay right now, we just drive down into it. It doesn't seem remote or removed. We're going to move over and have a look, hopefully, and show how removed it actually was. I mean, this doesn't look developed at all. And you could only get there by boat, is that right?
There was a road, but it wasn't a very good road. So a lot of times the road was washed out, or you couldn't get past different obstacles. Yeah. So the most reliable way to get to Departure Bay was by ferry. So there was a ferry service dating back to the 1870s that connected Departure Bay to Nanaimo, and the ferry fare was 25 cents each way.
Wow. Okay, and now the life that happened in that remote area of Departure Bay is filled with stories of debauchery and crime, and we're going to get into some of that after a short break.
Still to come today, a Vancouver Island teen with a successful acting career looking for a lap to curl up on and breaking up for the health of it.
Did you know that in the olden days, when they were referring to upstage and downstage, it was quite literally that the stage was on a ramp. So downstage, which is closer to the audience, was actually lower than the people upstage. So when you were blocking people that were back, you could see them out from behind the people who were in front.
And did you know that Nanaimo used to be referred to only as what you would call the downtown core.
Yes.
So this is an old map. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at property that was called Wellington. Today, Wellington is still an area of Nanaimo, but back in the 1880s, it was a completely separate community. It had its own stores, houses, churches, a cemetery, and it was connected up with Departure Bay because Departure Bay was the coal wharf where the coal that was mined in Wellington was shipped from.
Okay, so these would be just trees and wilderness.
Exactly.
And the railway line from where would this be today? Wellington, there's a cemetery there, kind of like the radio station, if you know where Island Radio is, that's the area that's
That
Wellington.
region, absolutely, right near-ish to Divers Lake.
Okay,
that
so
area.
Divers Lake is here and the railway all the way, and you can see little remnants of that railway out and about today.
If you were in Departure Bay at low tide, you'd still see some of the pilings from the coal wharf.
Right, okay. Nanaimo, built on coal. We're going to look into what that coal drove some people to later on this edition of Go Island. But first, we're revisiting a story, as we do on Fridays, about a young teenager based in Qualicum Beach who's making it pretty big in the world of acting. He's landed a lead role on YTV's Some Assembly Required. Here's Jocelyn Matwee. A pretty amazing kid, absolutely. Another amazing thing is the history and all of the things that took place in Departure Bay long before it is what it is today. Amy Greenaway, you were talking earlier about how we think the world has gone to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket. But back in the day in Departure Bay, this kind of stuff was happening. What kind of crimes were taking place back then?
Well, things weren't really very much different, I think, in a lot of ways, 100 years ago, 150 years ago even. But in Departure Bay in the 1880s, there was a lot of sailors coming in on coal ships, waiting to get loaded with coal from the Dunsmuir mine. And that led to a lot of downtime for the sailors. So they would end up in the Bay Saloon, which was right on Departure Bay Beach. And there was all the rowdiness that went along with a bunch of sailors sitting around all day drinking. So
Okay, and there was a jail in
Yes.
Departure Bay as well.
Departure Bay had its own jail. It was at the intersection of Departure Bay and Hammond Bay Roads,
Okay.
just to keep the sailors in one place. It was really an overnight lockup. It wasn't a long-term jail.
Polite way of saying a drunk tank, I think. And it was sort of a transient population too, coming and going. They didn't really have any pride or ownership of calling it home.
No, they didn't have ties to the community really, other than just coming in periodically on ships. So that, I think also, like you're saying, led to some problems.
And who's this guy?
This is Sam Fiddick, and a lot of people might recognize the Occidental Hotel, which has been in Nanaimo since the 1880s.
Right.
And Sam was in Departure Bay in the 1880s just for the day, and when he went to leave in his horse and buggy, a few sailors held him at gunpoint and said, "You're going to take us to Nanaimo." So he let the sailors into his horse and buggy, and lucky for him, they jumped out halfway home, so he was quite relieved that he made it home safe. But it was a buggy jacking, and today we think of carjackings, but
Right.
not so uncommon.
Okay. And now a lot of this history is still alive and well and living in Nanaimo. This clock, for example, came from the Bay Saloon.
That's
And
right.
how did it end up here in the museum?
The clock is owned by the Harper family, and the Harper family still lives on their family property in Departure Bay, the same place where the Bay Saloon was located. So they were kind enough to let us borrow the clock for the exhibit.
Okay, we are just touching the surface in Departure Bay, the exhibit that's running here at the museum in Nanaimo until the end of May. You can come down and check it out for yourself. Lots of interesting tidbits that you would never guess without coming and looking it up for yourself. We'll be back with more after a short break. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. Who doesn't love a good ghost story? And Departure Bay's got a doozy, all based around the Dunsmuir Mansion?
That's right. The Dunsmuirs built a mansion in Departure Bay in the 1880s, and they only lived there for about 10 years. It was so they could be close to the coal wharf so that James Dunsmuir could manage the operations there. He lived in the house with his wife Laura and their young children.
And this is a sort of a family picture in front of the mansion?
This is a later family, but this is the same house.
Okay. And it's hard to see in this image here because it's so old, but this is the mansion. And this was the Bay Saloon that we were talking about earlier. And the rest of that is the railway and wilderness.
Absolutely.
That was Departure Bay. So how does the ghost story come to be?
Well, a family was living in the house right after the Dunsmuirs moved out in the 1890s, and they had a family as well. And the woman who lived in the house was playing the piano one day, and she looked up and she saw a child's face floating in the doorway. It happened later on again that day, and then never happened again.
Was there some tragedy, some incident that happened
Turned
in the
out
house?
that the Dunsmuirs lost 2 very young children while they lived in the house.
Okay, that's the chill factor right there. Okay, there's lots to discover about Departure Bay. You can do that here at the Nanaimo Museum until May the 31st. We're going to head down to Victoria now, where Dan Kahn, unfortunately, is going through a separation. You never know what to expect from Dan Kahn. You can experience the history of Departure Bay here at the Nanaimo Museum until the end of May. That does bring us to the end of this edition of Go Island. We've got to mention something before we go quickly, though. It's been a rough couple of weeks in Nanaimo. The tragic incident at the Western Forest Products Mill on Wednesday, April the 30th, is beyond sad. But the families of Michael Lunn, who lost his life that day in the shootings, along with Fred McEachran, are trying to find some way to move forward and to heal after those incidences. And they're working to establish the Red Shirt Foundation as a way to help the families and anyone affected by the shootings at the mill here in Nanaimo. And the Red Shirt Foundation is asking people to wear red on Saturday, May the 10th, or use the image of a red shirt in any of your social media networks as a way to show support for the people who were affected by the tragic incidences that took place on April the 30th. And they are working towards as well establishing a National Red Shirt Day that would take place every year on April the 30th. They're currently building a website. You can get more information, www.redshirtfoundation.com, from pain to purpose. And just to note that the funerals for both of those men are being held in Nanaimo on Saturday, May the 10th. Brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Lakeside Dental Clinic Go Island is brought to you by Lakeside Dental Clinic, a division of the Vancouver Island Implant Centre, delivering dental services, including dental implants and sedation dentistry, all under one roof. Clothing supplied by Catwalk Fashions. Kate's Hair and Aesthetics provided by Maffeo Salon.